Good morning. My name is Walter Johnson. I'm here to talk to you about thorium. Recently, someone asked on a post to explain this whole thing in layman's terms, so I'm going to try to do that for you. First, thorium itself. Thorium is a metal which is more abundant than uranium. That doesn't tell the whole story, but we'll get to it in a bit. Handling and storage. Thorium is an alpha emitter, which means that I can basically hold it in my hand with no danger. The dead layer of skin on my hand will protect me from the alpha. A layer of saran wrap, for example, would protect from alpha. I could sit on a ton of this stuff, and the dead skin layer on my butt and my shorts would protect me from the alpha. So there's really no danger from handling this, other than maybe breathing the dust. So I wouldn't want to breathe thorium dust. The alpha can harm you if you breathe it internally, especially in your lungs. The reason for that is because when you breathe something like that into your lungs, it stays for a while. So anyway, wouldn't want to breathe it, but I can sit on it all day long. Thorium is produced in a lot of processes, particularly rare earth mining. That's one reason there's not much rare earth mining done in the United States, because we're so risk averse. We are afraid to. We don't know what to do with all that thorium. Well, I'm here to tell you there is a use for it, and that's what we're talking about today. So why is thorium more efficient? Well, if you use thorium in a pressurized water reactor, it's not particularly more efficient. You have the same limitations on thorium that you would have in uranium-235. Thorium is used to produce uranium-233, which is a fissile material. And that material fissions just like uranium-235, and efficiency is just like uranium-235, and with limitations somewhat similar to uranium-235. And the limitations are that when you put fissile fuel into a solid component like a fuel rod, you have to put a lot of extra in there. The reason for that is you got to be able to start the reactor up, and you got to be able to run it for a while. So you have to have enough uranium in there to both start it up and enough extra to keep it running. Now, they put control rods in the reactor and other things to allow them to start it up without blowing it up. Control rods are shoved in there, they start it up, and then as uranium gets used up, they withdraw the rods slowly to allow the use of more of the uranium. Problem is, you only got so big of control rods, so when those control rods are all the way out, you're done. And this is, of course, an oversimplification for you nuclear physicists out there. I know all about burnable poisons. We don't need to get that deep into the weeds today. So anyway, when you finish withdrawing your control rods, you're done. You got to refuel the reactor. Now, of course, when you're done with that, you still have a whole lot of uranium left in the reactor. Because remember, once you pull those rods all the way out, you still have enough uranium left in there to keep it critical, but you don't have any more, so you can't keep it critical any longer. So there's still a lot in there, 99% of the original uranium probably. So you're throwing away or disposing of or storing 99% of your fissile material in a solid fuel reactor just because of the way you have to operate it. Unless you had control rods, well, you just couldn't. It's not physically possible to do. Now, in a liquid fluoride thorium reactor, you have other things going on. When you have a liquid fluoride thorium reactor, you're breeding uranium-233, hopefully, in that reactor, and that's what's being used as the fuel. Well, for a thorium reactor, a liquid fluoride thorium reactor, or a liquid thorium reactor of any kind, you only need enough fuel in there at any one time to run the reactor, to maintain it critical. You don't need a lot of excess fuel. In nuclear terms, we call it excess reactivity. But you don't need a lot because you're able to refuel it continuously. So at any one time in the core, there's just enough fuel in there to be critical. Now, the advantage to that is I get to use it all up. I can operate the reactor for 10 years, adding uranium-233 as necessary into the core to keep it critical. And I've used all of that thorium up, or uranium-233 up from the thorium. The only thing that's left when I'm done is a core full of uranium-233, which I can, if I shut down the reactor and decommission it, I can take that fuel out and go use it somewhere else. So you don't lose any fuel at all, really. I mean, you do lose a minute amount to the production of things that don't fission and stuff like that, but very little. Essentially negligible amounts or get lost. You basically use 99% of the fuel instead of losing 99% of the fuel. Let's talk about fission product removal. Fission product removal, well, let's back up. Neutron production. Thorium produces a little over 2 neutrons per fission. That's good news. That allows you to use 1 neutron for fission, 1 to breed another uranium-233, and hopefully a little extra to breed extra uranium-233 in order to refuel or to start up other reactors. And then you have a little that's going to leak out. No matter what you do in a reactor, you're going to have neutron leakage. So you need enough neutrons being produced to where you can do all those things, and that's why you need a production of neutrons per fission greater than 2. Back to fission product removal. In a normal reactor, fission products are not removed until you remove the fuel rod itself. So they're in there forever, essentially, until the end. In a liquid fluoride thorium reactor, you can remove fission products essentially continuously. Fission product gases can be vented off as the liquid fluoride cycles through the reactor. So you basically have no fission product gas inventory in the core at any one time other than what's being produced at that minute. Solid fission products can get removed chemically from the core materials, basically as often as you have it designed into the system. So essentially you have very little, if any, fission products in the core at any one time, especially compared with a solid fuel reactor, which has all of its fission products in the core at any one time. This provides for a high degree of safety because you don't have much in the way of decay heat from a liquid fluoride thorium reactor, since you have very little fission products. In Fukushima, when the reactor shut down during the catastrophe that occurred there, the rods went in, the reactor shut down, fission stopped. Problem is, when you shut down a reactor like that, and just to give you a little bit of information about power reactors, generally a utility operates those things at 100%. It's just more efficient that way. You operate your nuclear reactors at 100%, and then you control load with other types of power, like coal or oil or gas or something like that. It's just the way it's done a lot. So when you shut down a power reactor from 100%, you have several percent of that power left in decay heat. Decay heat is what happens when fission products decay. They decay and produce large quantities of heat. And that's what caused the problem at Fukushima, amongst other things, obviously. But the decay heat was what they couldn't remove once the cooling methods failed, or the battery died and the cooling methods failed. Now, let's compare that with, or contrast that with, a liquid fluoride thorium reactor. Because you don't have much in the way of fission products in there, remember, you're chemically removing them and venting them off almost continuously. When you shut down a thorium reactor, the fission stop, and the only thing you have left is decay heat from whatever minute amount of fission products you happen to have left in the core. Also, when liquid fluoride thorium reactors are shut down in an emergency, and in the case where you lose power, they're designed for the core to drain into a non-fissionable geometry. For those of you who don't know, fission is inordinately linked. Sorry, I'm using the wrong words here. It's linked inextricably to the geometry that it's in. So if you take the geometry of say a pressurized water reactor and change it in almost any way, fission is going to stop. That's just the way it is. So and it's the same in a liquid fluoride thorium reactor. When you drain the core into a non-fissile or non-fissionable geometry, fission is going to stop. The physics compel it to stop. There's no way around it. It's going to stop if it didn't stop already in the core. So then when it's sitting in this non-fissionable geometry, heat can basically radiate to the environment. You can't really have a meltdown in a liquid fluoride thorium reactor. It's molten already, and that actually helps you in this situation. A little bit about thorium operating temperatures. Pressurized water reactors operate at temperatures that are efficient for or safe for the uranium fuel, and also, efficient for the steam turbines that they use. Liquid fluoride thorium reactors can operate at a much higher temperature. This allows them to operate Brayton cycle engines, which are much more efficient than steam turbines. That will allow you also to do other things. The high temperatures allow you to make hydrogen, make pure water, and I'm sure there are any number of other industrial uses for high temperatures that you get in a liquid fluoride thorium reactor that I haven't studied and not aware of. Anyway, thorium is more abundant. It's easy to handle. It's non-fissile in its natural form, so you don't have to worry about proliferation from it. It can be stolen. Nobody can make a bomb out of it. Nobody would want to steal it, for one thing. If you're going to steal something to make a bomb, you're going to steal plutonium or uranium-235 or something like that. It's much more efficient, probably 99 times more efficient just in the reactor itself, apart from its overall more abundance, than a uranium-235 reactor, simply because of the way things work in a pressurized water reactor compared to a liquid fluoride thorium reactor. Remember, you're using all your fuel in a thorium reactor. Plenty of neutrons are produced, so you have enough neutron budget to hopefully make more uranium-233 to use to start up new reactors. Fission products are removed continuously. This allows a much safer reactor, because when it shuts down, you're not producing 4, 5, 6, 7% of the reactor power in decay heat. Producing very little decay heat. So all you have left is the residual heat in the reactor plus a small amount of decay heat from the fission products. Much safer. It's safer because you're not operating at high pressures. You can't have high pressure kinds of explosions like you had in Fukushima. It's basically operating at atmospheric pressure. Decay heat is smaller. You can drain it to a non-fissionable geometry and just let heat radiate to the environment. You can make a much more efficient system out of it using the Brayton cycle, and you can use the reactor for other things than making electrical power, like making hydrogen or water. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'd be happy to discuss this at more length and more detail. I hope this answers some of your questions at least. Have a good day.